Okay. So today's Bible study, I'm labeling it demonic busyness. Okay, that's what we're gonna call it today, demonic busyness. And so we're gonna look at because we all experience seasons and periods where we're extremely busy, where it feels like there's so much going on, and we feel like we just need to be able to keep our heads above water, right? And sometimes busyness can be a good thing, it can be a God thing, and sometimes it's a demonic thing. And so we're gonna look into that. We're gonna look at two stories in scripture. So just for those, who are taking notes, we're going to be centered today on Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42, as well as Exodus chapter 5. Okay. So Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42, as well as Exodus 5. So I'm going to read. So we're just going to hop right in since we've already prayed and everything. We're ready to go. I'm going to read Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. And then we're going to go straight into Exodus 5. And then we're going to kind of put it all together. Okay. So Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. And I'll be reading from the NIV version. Okay. Luke chapter 10, verse 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Okay, that is Luke 10, verses 38 to 42. Now we see Martha and Mary are, you guys know the story of Lazarus. They are Lazarus's sisters. Okay, so Jesus has a very close relationship with this family. And so Jesus goes to their house as he's traveling, or as he's, making his way. And we see the difference between the two sisters. We see Martha is very busy with the things that she has to do because she's trying to serve, right? She's trying to serve and prepare, like get preparations ready. Meanwhile, we see Mary just wants to be at the feet of Jesus, right? And so Martha is upset because it's like, yo, I got all these things I got to do, right? And you're here, why aren't you helping me? Because you're too busy sitting at the Lord's feet, like obsessing over him, or whatever way she may have been feeling. It's like, why are you not helping me prepare to be able to, take care of our guests, right? Tasha Lynn is called demonic busyness. Okay. So we see that Martha's upset and she's overwhelmed and she's so focused on serving, so focused on the task that is at hand. And she's upset at Mary, who's just sitting at the feet of Jesus, learning and being ministered to. And so we see that Martha was doing good work, right? What she was doing was not bad, right? She was serving. She was trying to be very hospitable, right? We see that she actually was doing good work. So there was really nothing wrong with that when you really think about it. But the issue is that she became distracted and busy with the work that she lost precious time with Jesus, right? She became so busy and distracted with the work that her focus was not on Christ. It was at the work that needed to be done, right? And so, the work kept her distracted from Jesus. So she was serving, yet she was distracted from the needed time and devotion that was required of him, with him. And so, sometimes we can find ourselves doing things that are not necessarily bad things, or, they're things that we feel like need to be done, or there's a time for that to be done, but we can be so consumed by it. We can be so focused on it that we forget what actually truly matters, right? That God is present and he's calling us to be able to come and spend time with him. But that's, we'll go into that a little bit more, but just kind of introduction. So that's the story of Martha and Mary, right? And we see that even Jesus answered and Jesus told her, Jesus responded by telling Martha that Mary actually chose the better of the two choices, the busyness, right? In wanting to serve versus the devotion. Versus the devotion. And so Jesus was very straightforward and explicit about, no, I'm not going to check her like you want me to check her, because she actually is doing what she should be doing. Okay. So that is Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. Now let's look at Exodus chapter 5. We're going to go to Exodus chapter 5. And then we'll talk about all of this. Okay, so we already did Luke 10. So Exodus chapter 5, and I'm gonna read it to you real quick, okay? So again, I'm reading from the NIV. And so just a little backstory. So God has called on to Moses to go before Pharaoh and to ask Pharaoh to let his people go. Okay. So Moses and Aaron are going to be going to Pharaoh, because the goal is to try to get them for Moses to let the people go. And so they're going to try to make a case before Pharaoh. So Exodus chapter 5, it starts off saying this. I'm just going to read it, and then after that, we'll talk about it. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God, or he may strike us with plagues or with the sword." This is the elders of Israel speaking. Verse 4, "But the king of Egypt said, Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their labor? Get back to your work." Then Pharaoh said, "Look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you are stopping them from working." That same day, Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and overseers in charge of the people: "You are no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw, but require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That is why they are crying out, 'Let us go and sacrifice to our God.' Make the work harder for the people so that they keep working and pay no attention to lies." Then the slave drivers and the overseers went out and said to the people, "This is what Pharaoh says: I will not give you any more straw. Go and get your own straw wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced at all." So the people scattered all over Egypt to gather stubble to use for straw. The slave drivers kept pressing them, saying, "Complete the work required of you for each day, just as when you had straw." And Pharaoh's slave drivers beat the Israelite overseers they had appointed, demanding, "Why haven't you met your quota of bricks yesterday or today as before?" Then the Israelite overseers went and appealed to Pharaoh. "Why have you treated your servants this way? Why have you treated your servants this way? Your servants are given no straw, yet we are told, 'Make bricks.' Your servants are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people." Pharaoh said, "Lazy. That's what you are, lazy. That is why you keep saying, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks." The Israelite overseers realized they were in trouble when they were told, "You are not to reduce the number of bricks required of you for each day." When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them, and they said, "May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." Okay, so that's Exodus chapter 5. So again, we're talking about demonic busyness, okay? So first we looked at Luke 10, verses 38 to 42. Now we're looking at Exodus chapter 5. So we read Exodus chapter 5, but now let's look at it closely to see what's happening, right? So we see it starts off with a request to let the people go so that they may do what? Not to go out and have a good time, right? Not to go, on vacation, quote unquote, but it's for the people to be let go so that they may go and worship God. Okay. The plea is for them to be able to dedicate time, a lot specific time, to go offer sacrifices to their God and to go worship God. All right. So that was the request. We see in verse 3, the elders of Israel asked for just 3 days off, right? They would just ask Pharaoh, "Just give us 3 days so that we can go journey and go do what we got to do." But we see that was denied because why? It took away from work. It took away from their work. Hold on for 1 second. Thank you. Thank you. Am I going to focus now? My husband just brought me food. I got to focus and not smell how good this is. All right, focus, Vanessa. Okay. So Okay. So they were asking for time off to be able to go worship God, right? Not to just go willy-nilly doing whatever they wanted. But Pharaoh denied it. Why? Because it took away from their work. And so we see in verses 6 through 9, Pharaoh gave this order to the overseers of the slave drivers, right? And the overseers in charge of the Israelites, of the people. And he tells them, you know what? They're asking for time off because they want to go worship their God, increase their workload. He says, increase their workload, essentially is what he's saying. Why? Because he knew what God wanted. He wanted the people to be let go. He knew what the people wanted. They wanted to be let go so that they can go worship God. And so he made it so that they were even busier than how they were before. Okay. He knew that they wanted time to, I want you to focus on this, right? He knew that they needed and wanted time to go worship God, and that's what God wanted from them as well. So he purposely made them even busier than they were so that they had no time to do that. Okay. Demonic busyness. All right. All right, verses 10-14. We see now the slave drivers who have been given this command by Pharaoh. Now they're actually putting that command, they're actually making sure that is exactly what is happening, that they're increasing the workload and the demand from the Israelites. And so we see that the situation becomes worse and worse because now they got to meet this quota with less resources. They got to go find the resources themselves, which means they now have less time, but they're still expected to produce the same amount with less time, right? So we see that he's literally making it unbearable for them. And in a way, you can see it as he's making it so that they could regret even asking and wanting to spend time with God, right? Because once that demand and that burden for them, that burden that is put on them increases, now it's like, man, I should have never said anything. I should have never asked to take time. I should have never asked to make time because now I'm paying for it. And so now you're upset over this thing that is actually what God is requiring of you, but you're upset because the enemy has increased the workload, has increased the burden, right? And so now instead of being upset at the enemy and just kind of, focusing the attention there, the focus is on, why did I even ask? Why did I even agree? Why did I even take the steps, right? Because now everything seems worse. One thing I want us to note is that many times we know what was going to happen because we know this story. We know that the people would end up being let go because God was going to make sure of it. So we know that deliverance was coming. But isn't it interesting that before the deliverance came, the situation grew worse and worse, even to the degree of it being unbearable? And so it's important for us to note and to understand that sometimes even when we see the situation, a situation getting worse and worse and worse, perhaps we should ask God, am I close to that breakthrough, right? Is that breakthrough so near? And that is the reason why the enemy is increasing the pressure and the tension that he's putting on me. And so, because we know that deliverance was coming. So before the deliverance came, the situation grew worse and worse for the Israelites. All right, let's go to verse 17. Now, they're pleading with Pharaoh, essentially, and saying, like, why are you having your servants treat us this way, right? Have we not been good workers, right? So why are you doing this to us, right? And so they're literally beating us, and they're literally treating us like nothing. And so in verse 17, we see Pharaoh's response is he calls them lazy. The KJV uses the word idle, IDLE. And so he calls them lazy. And he's like, that's why you want to go and do what you're asking to do, is because you're lazy, right? And so there's this demonic mindset, right? And, and I feel like I've fallen into this trap in the past as well, that there's this demonic mindset that being idle, right, is lazy. And so sometimes we stay trying to find ways to stay busy. Like God may have given us this opportunity now to be able to find rest, because things have been so exhausting. And now we get presented with this moment of rest. And instead of resting, we think we're being lazy. And now we're trying to figure out what we can do. Can I do laundry? Can I run this errand? We're looking for things. It's like God has opened this door and it's like, listen, my child, now you can rest. It's time to rest so that I can pour into you. But we're uncomfortable with that rest because of the mindset that we've been forced to have, is that if I'm not in motion, if I'm not doing something, I'm idle, I'm lazy, and that is a bad thing. And so it's a demonic mindset. And so, because we know what true laziness is, right? There's a difference between true laziness and actually a moment of peace and rest, which we should have, because we see that even God rested on the seventh day, right? And so we are asked to make time for rest. But this mindset has us believing that when we're not doing something, that we are lazy. So we're out here trying to find ways to keep ourselves busy. And so we're literally working against the hand of God in those situations. But scripture tells us that we have to make time for rest, right? God rested on the seventh day. We see that even as Jesus was ministering to the people, and the people were growing more and more, and he's ministering to them. What did Jesus do? Oftentimes he would go and break free from the people, go to a mountain to pray, or go find a quiet place so that he can go before God. Why? Because rest and having periods set for God and for seeking God is absolutely necessary. And so we need to get past this mindset, and we need to be able to understand when it's demonic versus when it's us being productive. Okay. So that's what we see. We see Pharaoh is making them feel bad for asking for this time to go to see God, right? Not to go sleep, not to go, have a good time, not to go drink or whatever it is that they could possibly be doing, or maybe that, the non-believers were doing. We see that he made them feel bad. And he's literally calling them lazy and making them feel like they should have never asked for this time. And so, that is a trick of the enemy, because the enemy is very sneaky. He's very good at making you feel bad for things that you should not feel bad about, making you question everything, right? Because that's exactly what happens. Now you start to question everything. Now they're questioning Moses and Aaron. Now they're saying, may God deal with you, because they think that Moses and Aaron are trying to kill them, right? And so now they think that Moses and Aaron are the issue, that's their threat, that's the enemy. And so we have to understand the way that the enemy moves and the way that the enemy works, right? How sneaky he can be. And if we're not careful, we can fall into that trap very easily, right? We can fall into that trap very easily. So that's an example of what demonic busyness looks like, right? It's when you're overwhelmed with the work, you're overwhelmed with the things that you have to do, and so overwhelmed to the point where there literally is no time for God. There's no time to pursue after God. There's no time to pray. There's no time to fast. There's no time to make that quiet time with God to continue to grow, right? And so, and we see that's very demonic, because if God is the one that has created an opportunity, trust and believe that God is not going to create an opportunity that's going to pull you away from him. That's never going to be the intention. Right. And so when you find yourself in a situation where you're now being pulled away from him, and so you have no time to even pursue after him, you have to ask yourself, is this of God? Or maybe this was something that was of God, but now it's been abused, right? Now there's something that has happened where it's evolved, and now I'm making this thing an idol, right? Because now this thing is consuming all of my time. So, so we have to understand that. Hold on. So we have to understand that. So essentially what happens is this: the enemy will use busyness to distract us and to keep us in cycles. And when we find ourselves in these cycles, we start to feel trapped, right? We start to feel like we just want a way out. And it's almost like we can see the way out, but we're afraid to take that step because we're afraid of the consequences. And so we stay finding ourselves in these cycles where we're repeating the same thing day in and day out. It's starting to look the same. We're getting overwhelmed. We're getting worn out. We're getting very weary. And those things that, God has given us to do, whatever assignments he's given us, wherever he's calling us, now that's on the back burner. Right? Because now we're so busy that we don't have time to do this. Like, well, God, why are you even asking me to do another thing? Because I have all this that I have to do, that I have to take care of, right? And so we have to understand that sometimes God will give you something to do. He'll put an assignment on you. He'll put a task on you. And that task or that thing is meant to lead to your breakthrough. But because you get so caught up in the things of the everyday life and all the things that you got to do, that you're not seeing the breakthrough that is ahead of you. You're seeing that this thing that is meant to be a blessing now is a burden for you, right? Now it's an issue. Now it's almost like a barrier. It's getting in your way. And so we have to be able to ask God to give us spiritual eyes that see, so that we're not seeing with our natural eyes, so that we're not making the mistake of, hating or despising or feeling burdened by something that God has given us to be a blessing or an open door. So that's what I wanted us to talk about, because I feel like we can be so busy, and I sense that many of us are in a season where God is increasing our capacity, and we're able to do more. We have more on our plates to do. But when there's the difference between the two, and I know I said this before the recording, is this, because this is where I found myself recently, where this is the busiest I feel like I've been in a long time. But it's very different than what I've experienced before. In the past, when I felt busy, I felt overwhelmed. I felt like I couldn't, like, there's so much to do, and I can't even fathom how I'm going to make the time for it. And I would get anxious. I would feel like, I'm getting burnt out, like I'm getting ready to just like explode, right? That was not, that was very demonic, right? Because in that time, I felt trapped. In that time, it felt like I couldn't see clearly. And even though I felt like God was pulling me to do certain things, it's like, how could I possibly do that? Like, there's just no way. Versus now, where I literally feel like there's nothing that he can put before me to do that I can't find time to do it. It's like the things that are, when I look at my to-do list now, and the things that I do day in and day out, and the things that I'm getting done, I'm getting so much done that it's shocking to me. Right? It's shocking to me how much I'm actually able to get done and accomplish. And but the difference between the two is now there's a peace that I feel while I'm doing all these things on my to-do list. There's this peace that comes with it. Why? Because he's given me the grace to be able to handle it. Right? Why? Because these are some of the things that he's actually asking me to do. So because he's asking me to do these things, he's giving me the grace to be able to handle doing them, and they don't feel like a burden, and they're also not wearing me out. Right. And so, and at the same time, most importantly, I still have time to seek him. I still have time to be in my word. I still have time to worship. I still have time to be like, Lord, I'm here. Speak to me. Like, what do you want to say? Right. Why? Because he's enlarged my capacity, where now I have the grace to do a lot more than I was able to do before. That is the difference between demonic busyness and divine busyness. I don't know if that's even a word, but we're making it one today. Okay. That's the difference between demonic busyness and divine busyness. One wears you out. One takes away the time that you would have with God. One stops you from being able to do godly and divine assignments that he's given you, right? One keeps you in a cycle where breakthrough is ahead of you, but you can't even see the breakthrough, and you don't even want to pursue the breakthrough because you're so overwhelmed. Whereas the other one, there's a grace for it. There's a peace that comes with it, right? Your capacity has been stretched and enlarged to be able to handle it. And you still have time for the things of God, and you're still seeking God throughout all of it, right? Why? Because it's divine. It's God that has placed the increased demands in you, but he's given you the ability, and he's equipped you to be able to handle it and to endure it. So we have to understand, when we're finding ourselves very busy, we have to try to figure out what the root of that busyness is. Is it demonic or is it divine? Did it start out divine, but because I've made it an idol, now it's become demonic? We have to understand what the root is, right? And so when we understand the root, we understand the purpose, because we understand the demonic one, it's to keep us distracted and to keep us to make us wasteful of the time that God is so graciously given us, right? One is to keep us trapped in a cycle. Right? It keeps us in bondage. The other one is to push us further into our destiny, right? The other one is filled with purpose. So when you find yourself in a season where you're feeling extremely busy, there's so much to do, so much going on, ask yourself, is this demonic or is this divine? And the way to know it, we've just talked about the way to be able to decipher, is it demonic or is it divine? So it's something that I really want us to focus on and understand, because the enemy will use busyness to keep us in cycles. And sometimes we think like, man, I'm so busy, and you feel like it's a good thing, but is it? Right? Is it really? Right? Can you still make time for God? Are you still on fire for God? Do you have peace while you're doing it all? Right? These are some questions that we have to ask ourselves so that we don't fall for the enemy's plans, right? So that we are not deceived. And so understand, if it's keeping you, looking at some of the notes that I wrote, if it's keeping you away from God, understand that it's not the will of God, right? There's a disconnect somewhere. There's a misunderstanding somewhere, or there's an abuse that has taken place somewhere, right? Because God is not going to give you something or call you to something or stretch you to be able to handle more so that it can pull you further away from him. It's just not of God. That's just not how he works, right? And so understand that, just so that you can decipher, because we're getting busier, right? Things are happening in our lives, things are moving, doors are being opened, opportunities are coming up, or maybe God's giving us new assignments, whatever it may be. Just try to figure out, why am I so busy? What is the root and what is the purpose of that busyness? So that's what I wanted us to talk about today. Because we got to finish on time today, so I wanted to go through it pretty quickly, but still in a way where we can really understand Exodus chapter 5, what really was going on in Exodus chapter 5. See, you can see Pharaoh symbolic of the enemy, right? Trying to put the people of God in bondage, trying to keep them strapped so that they're not able to freely go and worship God, right? And he did really good. He was really good at doing that. So in keeping them stuck and making them feel like slaves and making them feel like there was no way out. And so we have to understand how the enemy works. And when you understand how the enemy works, it is much harder to be able to fall for his tricks, and it is easier to be able to fight, right? Because you understand what the issue is. You understand who your enemy is and the tactic that he's using. But when you're blind to it and you don't know, it's like you're shooting arrows, but like you're missing the target. Like there's no target before you. So that's what I wanted us to talk about. I'm going to give some time just so that we can have a discussion. Anything that you guys want to add, anything that you guys want to share based on what we talked about in Exodus 5 as well as Luke chapter 10?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say I absolutely love how you use both of these Bible verses just to demonstrate that busyness. Just in my own personal life, like just in the past few weeks, I've moved and I have felt that I'm so distracted. Like I still do my nighttime. Like I was just thinking about this the other night. So it just makes me smile at the same time where it's like, okay, God, I hear you. You know what I mean? And so it's just dope. And I love that. And it is so true, especially like you said, that what's the busyness? What's the root and purpose of the busyness? I just find that to be a really important question to ask ourselves when we are caught up in all of the things that life brings our way, or how when we do get caught up in that busyness and being able to step back and look, am I moving further away from God? Mm-hmm. Or am I still remaining rooted in him? And I love that because I can see how in just the past couple of weeks, even I definitely feel the pulling away to where now it's like, okay, I need to refocus and figure out what this busyness, you know what I mean? And so I love that. That was dope. That was great.
One thing I want to add is just for anyone who may end up seeing this and who don't know kind of like our Bible study and this is not saying like, because like having kids, they can keep you busy, right? This is not saying that your kids are like demonic, right? Because you're busy with all the things to do with kids. It's not saying that, but you guys know what I'm talking about, right? It's like, we're not talking about family things that is, it's part of the job, right? We're talking about these extra things that come up, whether it's work-related deadlines, whether it's other things that we've taken on that we didn't necessarily need to take on. But yeah, just to clarify that, yeah, because kids can keep us busy, but it doesn't mean that's demonic busyness, right? It's just, we're talking about, these things, the things of life, like everyday thing. Ministry we can make ministry an idol where now we abuse that opportunity or that call, and now it's becoming something that's pulling us away from God, right? Anything can turn into that. That's why we have to ask ourselves, even if it was divine in the beginning, has there been some sort of disconnect or misunderstanding or abuse of that thing where now the purpose that it was meant to serve, it's not doing that, and now instead of pushing you closer to God, it's pulling you further away from God, right? And so just so that we can kind of like distinguish and not take something that was a God thing and think that, oh no, it's demonic because I'm busy. Like that's not what it means. But you guys already understand what that busyness looks like, right? The best example is Exodus chapter 5. That's what it looks like, right? It's like, no, you don't have time to worship God. You don't have time to spend time with God, right? And now I'm going to increase your workload and your burden so much so that now it's crushing you. right? Like it's suffocating you and you feel like there's no way out, right? And so that's what we're talking about. So yeah, thanks for sharing, Tashalyn. Anyone else have anything that they want to share?
Oh yeah, me. I think this Bible study this afternoon, it's for me. I told you what's going on with my job, and then even though God showed me what was about to happen, and then still I'm still worried. And this morning I was thinking, I was like, maybe I can spend more time with God. Maybe I can spend more time praying, fasting. Because lately I've been so busy and then rushing to go to bed. And then when it's time to pray, I just do a quick prayer and then go back to bed and then wake up 5 o'clock in the morning, go back to work, coming in the afternoon, so tired. And then it's like, I have no time to like with my Bible, spend like quality time with God. And then listening to this, I was like, is she talking to me? Well, I didn't tell you that. That's why I said, okay, I don't think I ever talked to her about that. Maybe it's God
Yeah, we did not
talking to
talk
me,
about that.
not her. I mean, we talked about everything, but not that. But
Yeah.
for me, I've been worried. I said, oh, I have no time to read my Bible. I have no time to do this. I'm always tired. And then they give me this time, like by laying me off. And then instead of me to be happy, at first I was happy. And then I'm starting to worry. I was like, no, I can't stay home. I have to work. I have this to do. I have that to do. And this morning, God just like was talking to me, like, spend more time with me. Do
Yeah.
this, do that. And
Yeah.
then why now it's just like confirmation.
And sometimes it's like,
Well,
and you don't know what else he has in store for you in the future. So maybe this
exactly.
time is a time for you to actually rest and to actually like let him pour more into you. But like we talked about, instead of seeing it that way, we have this mindset that if we're not working and doing all these things, that we're lazy or that
Yeah,
we're not making good use of our time. And it's like, no, maybe God has created an opportunity now for you to be able to breathe and reset, right?
yeah,
That
yeah,
and just be rejuvenated so that now you can get ready for like the next phase or the next job offer or whatever it is that's going to come. So we have to change our mindset, right? And ask God to change our vision so that we're not seeing things in the with our natural eyes. We're seeing things with spiritual eyes, the way that he wants us to see it. But yeah,
exactly. Because listen, everybody's saying the same thing. Oh, Brunette, you're so good. I don't know why they lay you off. Even the doctor I worked today, and he said that I can't go and talk to them for you. And then I looked at that. I was like, no, you don't have to do that. But in my head, when I step out, it's like, why you say no? But it's like part of me wanna like take time.
yeah.
But another part of me saying, like, you have to work. I'm
And the thing
like,
with you is God showed you in advance, like
exactly.
this is
Even
what's going
like
to happen.
before this whole thing happened. And I'm still like, okay, Brunette,
It's
you have to
it's
stop.
it's the mindset,
Well,
right?
Vanessa, I praise God for you. This is just a confirmation for me,
I
not to
think
worry.
I thank God that this is, I think, confirmation for many of us, right? Because
Mostly for me, because it's like I was fighting with this thing. Seriously, mostly for me. I'm not saying about anybody else, but those words are for me. Seriously.
well, I'm glad that you got some sort of confirmation. So that's good to hear.
Yeah. I just took a shower. Yeah. Praise God.
Um, anyone else have anything that they want to add or that they want to share before I end the recording? We can
Yeah,
chat after, but just for the recording purpose.
I want to say that this is awesome.
Hi, ladies. I'm sorry, Adriana. Keep going.
Who's gonna
Go
go,
ahead,
Kathy or Adriana?
She can go. She tried it first.
All right, thanks. No, I just wanted to say, like, wow. But also, the Lord has like been speaking to me about this too. And I was like going bananas over here when you said Martha and Mary, because I forgot this, but a few days ago, while I was on break from like my training, and it's a remote job, so it's like I'm in front of the computer, listening to the training, everything like that, but then we have breaks in between. And so when I was doing my break, I was so adamant and excited that I found a way to like organize a lot of things that I needed to have organized in my for my training, and then also for like my personal, stuff that I was had on the side or whatever. And so I remember like I was praying and everything like that. I was like, I tried my best because I don't want to I do my best to not get caught up in like the work and not spending time with God like I did in my previous season when I was working remotely. It's like I felt like I was like losing it. But, by God's grace, this is more like, peaceful. It's not so rigorous. And so I was spending time in prayer because I had a little time and whatever. And then something like hit my mind like, oh, you got to do this. And I was like, I was praying and I was like, I realized that I felt like this anxiousness. And then I was like, it's like that peace that I was like pressing into God, and then I was like feeling him. And then once that thought came, it's like this anxiousness kind of rose up, and then I was like, no, but this is time with God. And then I started to think on it a little bit more, and I'm like, oh, but what if this, what if that? The time, time is, I'm like, what? No, I wasn't like that at first, but afterwards, because I did, your girl fell for it. I got up and
you felt you bit the bait.
But it wasn't nothing crazy. It was just like, and that's why it was like so stupid, because it was like, it wasn't nothing that was like urgent or an emergency. But when I did that, I heard that it was very light actually, but I heard the Lord say, don't be like Martha.
Wow.
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 Martha. And then I was like, the Holy Spirit brought it back to my memory, the story. And I was like, she was the busy sister.
Yes.
I'm like, Lord, please have mercy on me. I'm sorry, Lord. And I'm like, okay, so how do I be like Mary? I'm like, it's so funny because I not to like pump my pride, be prideful or anything like that, but I do my best to be intimate with God, but I realize as I'm getting older, seasons in life, sometimes they change it. Well, they change, but sometimes it can, if you let it, affect your intimacy and your growth in your relationship with the Lord, not just the works, not just ministry. You can be doing that and hitting it, on point, everything like that. But your relationship and your intimacy with God can be lacking very much so. So, I do my best to like try to do that, but I realize I haven't been doing a good job. I actually had to apologize to the Holy Spirit for not being, open, and for like, not being a good friend, not being a good best friend and everything like that. I was like, Lord, teach me how to be a better friend to the Holy Spirit. I'm like praying these different prayers now because it's like, got to get back in shape. And the busyness it came, but it's like, it's all it's figurative. It's not actually like literal busyness. It's not actually like from, not God telling me, oh yeah, you need to do this. And that's also, I want to say that can also cloud your thinking and cause you to miss when God is actually talking to you, because you think that it's something that you need to do. And the Lord is like pointing you in the direction to do this or whatever the case is, but it's actually not. It's the enemy, or it could be yourself, but it's not God. Like you, and I'm glad that you gave that divine busyness and demonic busyness. I like it. It's not in the Bible, but it's like that's what if you compare it, that's exactly what it is. So, yeah. So I just wanted to say that the Lord said, do not be like Martha to me, guys. I was like, what the me? Yeah.
And now this is your reminder again, why you can't be like Martha, right? And it's interesting. It's like, that's the one that we started with, right? Just going straight into it. And this is the week that we start talking about it. Yeah. God is so good at really confirming his word and just confirming the things that he's speaking to us or how he's leading us, right? Or even in giving us clarity, right? In praying and then like, God, I don't know what to do. And then he's like, all right, like, this is it, right? Be careful, right? And so being busy is not a bad thing, right? But it's just understanding the level of busyness the root of that busyness and the purpose of that busyness, right? And so, and sometimes we go through seasons where we're busier than others. And so, the time that if we had hours that we could spend with God and doing all these things, now maybe it's brought down to like 30 minutes, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that that is a bad thing, but maybe that season that you're walking through, it's just more is required of you in doing, all these things. But we have to remember that there has to be time made for God, right? Even if those hours have, decreased, but we can't get to the point where it's like, I don't even have time. We can't get to the point where I don't have time. We have to find time in some way, right? And so, but understand that God will, will give you the grace to be able to do things that he is asking you to do. He will give you the grace to be able to do it without it feeling like you have no time for him, right? And so that's what I really want us to understand. It's just the difference, right? In knowing kind of how God works and how he moves, right? And it's like he's not going to give you something that's going to consume all of your time, and now your relationships are falling apart, your house is falling apart, your kids have no, you know what I mean? Like he's not going to give you things that's going to destroy these things that he has given you as a blessing. He's going to give you things and give you and equip you to be able to handle the increased demands of that thing, right? Where that thing is not going to crush you, it's just going to continue to push you. And so that's what I want us to understand is the difference, because we can get lost in that, right? And being able to know kind of where we truly are and what we're dealing with.
Amen.
Kathy, there's something that you had wanted to share? If you're still there.
Well, no, I'm still here. But basically, I was just same thing as Brunette and Adriana, even Tashlene. Like the past few days, I felt like I was doing the same thing, lacking a little bit when it comes to reading the Bible, worshiping, even worship. Like I'm always listening to music and like singing. And I found myself this morning actually was thinking that I haven't even listened to music in the last a couple days, and but I found myself at the same time, and I don't think it's like the busyness, it's more like the laziness with me, because I did find myself being lazy the last few days, like with low energy, didn't want to do much. I found myself sitting around too much and not doing, or maybe doing things that I normally don't really do, like watching TV. I don't watch TV ever. And the past few days, I've been watching TV and instead of like doing other things. So I kind of like this morning was telling God, I'm like, oh my God, I haven't read the Bible in 2 days. I haven't. There's a devotional that I read every single day, and I haven't read it in 2 days. I mean, like this whole week, Monday, Tuesday, and even today, I haven't read any of them. And I do have my Gabriela, my little one. She's been sick all these days. I had to take her to emergency room, and she's been home all these days. But even that is not the excuse for me to say, oh, yeah, I don't have time to read the Bible, or I don't have time to read my book. Because even if I'm sitting with her, taking care of her, I have time to read the Bible. But I haven't done so in the last few days. And today, everything you said and everything, the words has also confirmed to me that it has given me confirmation.
One thing I would add, Kathy, is sometimes we need to stop, right? Like sometimes we need to have moments where we don't do anything, right? Where, and like I said, it may feel like you're being lazy, but it may not necessarily be you being like, it may not necessarily be that you were being lazy, right? So let me give you an example of why I say that. I'm someone who's always like, go, go, go. Like, I feel like I'm always doing like so much at once, right? That's how I feel like that's just how I'm wired. Like, I don't know, like I'm always doing like something busy and I don't know how to stop. And I found that there's been times that God has really communicated to me that I need to rest. Like I need to make time for rest, like doing nothing, just laying down and just like, whether it's just like listening to music, watching TV, not doing anything. And he's communicated that in different ways, but I've learned when he's telling me to rest. like, because I noticed the signs, because he's been very consistent with me in that area. Because I'm like, sometimes you just got to give it to me straight, Lord, because talk to me like I'm stupid, like, like sometimes I just need, because I don't want to overanalyze things, right? And I've realized that he's been really consistent in how he's communicating with me the periods when it's time for me to rest, right? Because if he does, and sometimes he has to force me to have to rest, and the way that he'll do that, that can vary. And I may just feel like, oh my God, like I can't, like, and I find myself taking a nap while I'm like watching the kids, things that I would never do, or like feeling like I can't even like keep my eyes open, right? Because like that's one of the ways that he'll communicate to me that, like, no, this is a period where I need you to rest. So sometimes, like, especially as parents and as people like who work and have all these things that we're doing, sometimes, yes, we can, misuse the time that we've been given, like free time that we have, and we don't make time for God. But sometimes God actually is telling us to rest, right? Like sometimes he's actually telling us to, like, just not, like, you don't need to do anything. It's okay to watch TV, right? Like it's okay to just be laying there. But even in the rest, we can still have conversations with him. We can still play some music and worship. We can still kind of like, we can still seek him in rest, right? But I just don't want us to be upset at ourselves, or feel bad about ourselves when we do make time for rest, because sometimes like rest is ordained, right? Like God is actually like saying you need to rest, right? Why? Because he needs to strengthen you back up again. He needs to pour back into you, and your body needs to calm down, right? And so yeah, especially if there's a lot going on, your kid is sick, and there's this and that going on, sometimes it's okay to feel like you're being lazy for a day or two, right? Because your body needs it. And if you're not forced to have to rest, sometimes you're going to find yourself resting in a way that you don't want it, right? Whether it's sickness, or it's something negative, right? So it's just being able to pick up and to understand when it is God and when it is not, right? And and even when we're consistently pursuing after him and seeking him, if we have a day or two where things are off and we're just like, we're dealing with something, or we're physically exhausted, God is not looking at us like Pharaoh is, like lazy, right? Like that's not, God is not looking at us like that. But we do know when we truly are being lazy, like when it's not, where it's like we need to rest, but it's because we just like, we're in a funk, like, right? Like we do know when we're in a funk. So just so that you don't have to be too hard on yourself if you find yourself in that situation, because maybe you're not being lazy. Maybe he really does need you to rest because you're like, go and doing so much at once. So just for us to be able just to seek him and being able to clarify what it is, and just you can judge it based on your desire or the time that you can allot just to have some one-on-one time with God. It doesn't have to be like, hours, but are you making time just to even like have a conversation, or just to be like, thank you, God, like for whatever it is that may have just happened, right? Just like things like that. That's relationship, right? He doesn't want us to have this like religious task or thing that we're just checking off a list. He wants us to have relationship, and relationship is, Lord, I'm exhausted. Like I can't read my Bible today, but I'm gonna play, a YouTube video of someone ministering or something. You know what I mean? Like it's our heart posture, right? And just the relationship that we're trying to have with him. Not like we're just trying to check something off a list. Oh, I read my Bible today, right? It's like, no, like, are you truly seeking me, right? Like, are you truly wanting to hear from me, right? And when I'm exhausted, I'm like, God, I'm tired. Like, like I can't do this right now. I'm tired. And then I'll just put on some music, and that's my time to just kind of like, Lord, I thank you for whatever it is, right? So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, very true.
So we're gonna, because we got to end on time. So Yolanda, is there anything you wanted to share before I end the recording?
I'd rather just save it because it would be a lot.
No,
Especially when it comes to rest. But this was good.
Come on, say it. Say
say what,
everything.
girl.
I want to hear
Yolanda,
it.
you're not here with us. You're not here with us as often as we've had you. So we want you to speak, okay?
Oh man, that's so funny. Well, definitely everything was really good. But you know how I am, Vanessa, especially when it comes to rest. Like before COVID happened, the Lord had me, do that. He's like, I want you to rest. And so I was like, okay. So the day that I decided to do it, like so much went into it because like, growing up, I always had to like do stuff and this, that, and the other, or, you know, even just like hearing like, oh, you're being lazy, this, that, and the other. So it was like a lot of things I had to fight to just go ahead and rest. And so when he told me that, I'm like, okay. So it was really hard to like break through and just do that. But it definitely prepared me for the whole COVID thing, because I think I probably wouldn't have handled it as good as I would have had he not told me prior to that.
Mhm.
And so one thing I like to do is I'll pencil it in my schedule every week, because like Vanessa, and I know many of us, like we can just be on our never ending to-do list,
Mhm.
that we're just wearing ourselves out. We're not even like hearing our bodies, because we're thinking of like the next thing to do. And I remember even being in a time where I worked so much that the one day I have off after like I think 2 months of being on the go, literally, um, I was so sick I couldn't even do anything, because of the fact that I just didn't, I just didn't rest. But I didn't think of it because of that, because I was just so used to doing.
That mindset.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny because, obviously, Vanessa, I don't know if you mentioned it, but obviously we were talking about the whole like busyness and this, that, and the other earlier, prior to the Bible study, or even me knowing that you were going to even talk about this today. But obviously the Lord had us on that conversation earlier. And so I was supposed to work today, and I actually told them I'm not going in, because I felt led to just take some time aside to stop what I'm doing and gather my thoughts and be obedient to what the Lord was telling me to do, which was to sit down, write the vision, and do some other work that wasn't involved with my day-to-day work. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I mean, I'm sorry I came in late. I didn't really get to hear the Bible verses or anything, but yeah, this was really good.
We talked about
That's all.
Luke chapter 10, the story of Martha and Mary, verses 38 to 42, and Exodus
Okay.
5, where Pharaoh was increasing the burden on the Israelites when they just wanted to go and worship God. But yeah, it's like,
Okay.
and so, God literally had you just, take the day off so that you can focus on these other things that you have not been able to make time for because you've been so busy, right?
Right.
And it's just, and that's the thing, that's why it's like it's important to know when God is telling us like stop, like I need you to focus on this right now, right? Because sometimes he has to kind of change our focus on what we actually should be focused on. Otherwise we're going to be focused on everything else but this assignment, or everything else but this next move that you need to make that's going to open this door into this other area, right? And so sometimes he has to get us to change our focus, and he can use rest to do that, right? Because now you're still, right, you're not doing all these other things, and so now it's easier to be able to hear what he has to say to you. It's like that still small voice, right? But it's hard to hear that still small voice when there's so much like noise, when there's so much going on, so much distraction. And I think it's interesting because I really felt led to do this Bible study today, because I really felt like there were many of us that were like in this busy season or entering a busier season. And so just hearing what you guys had to say was just confirmation for me that like, yes, this is really what is happening within the Bible study. I know, what are we missing? We're missing someone. Shante, I think. Shante. I know like this is where we are, this is kind of the season we are in now, or we are entering. And so it's really important for us to really focus on like, Lord, what are you saying? What are you doing? Is this you? Is this not you? Right? And to know and understand that if God has given us an assignment or something that we should be working on, then understanding that the enemy is his job is going to try to keep you busy so that you're not able to make time for that assignment, right? And so we have to be able to pick up on when that is actually at play, and how we can, do what we need to do to make time in some way, find time in some way, or create time in some way to be able to work on this other thing that God is calling us to work on, right? In some situations, it means, doing it later at night when there's like sacrificing some sleep sometimes, right? Sometimes it may be, canceling certain things on the calendar and like, no, I need to make a time every day at this time, even if it's 15 minutes, this is what I'm going to work on. And in some extreme situations, it's to quit your job and to pursue this because this is where God is leading you, right? So we have to understand our relationship with God and how he's calling us and what we can do to actually, reprioritize ourselves. So that's what I want us to really be able to focus on right now, as things start to come, opportunities come, but also distractions come, right? For us to be able to categorize, this is a distraction. This is actually something that I need to do so that we are making good use of our time and we're not busy to the point of exhaustion and to the point of being wasteful, right? With our time and wasteful with the assignments of the kingdom, if that makes sense. So yeah, so that's our Bible study today. Ladies, I'm gonna end the recording. And I'm just I'll post the recording in the Facebook group just for replays and anybody else who missed it. My screen changed, so hold on, I gotta end it.